No, I think you got the words down. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Paramahansa Acharya Ashtotar to the Shishimad of Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Acharya Ashtotar to the Shishimad of Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 18th day of September 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 6 entitled Dhyana Yoga, text number 25, on page 279. Shanai Shanai Upadamed Buddhya Dviti Guhitaya Atmasangstam Manakritpa Nakinchid Apichintayet Shanai Shanai Upadamed Buddhya Dviti Guhitaya Atmasangstam Manakritpa Nakinchid Apichintayet Shanai Shanai Upanamed Buddhya Dviti Guhitaya Atmasangstam Manakritpa Nakinchid Apichintayet Shanai Shanai Upadamed Buddhya Dviti Guhitaya Atmasangstam Manakritpa Nakinchid Apichintayet. You want to try to hear that? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jamal. We are on page 279. Text 25. Mm-hmm. Shanai Shanar Upadamed Buddhya Dhutigrihitaya Atma Sangstam Hanakritpa Nakinchid Apichinte. Okay, I'll read the synonyms. Shanai, gradually. Shanai, step by step. Upadamate, one should hold back. Buddhya, by intelligence. Driti Grihitaya, carried by conviction. Atma Sangstam, placed in transcendence. Manaha, mind. Kritva, making. Na, not kinchit, anything else. Api, even. Chintayate, should think of. Translation. Gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction. And thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. Purport. By proper conviction and intelligence, one should gradually cease sense activities. This is called pratyahara. The mind, being controlled by conviction, meditation, and cessation from the senses, should be situated in trance or samadhi. At that time, there is no longer any danger of becoming engaged in the material conception of life. In other words, although one is involved with matter as long as the material body exists, one should not think about sense gratification. One should think of no pleasure aside from the pleasure of the Supreme Self. This state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Milatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So Krishna is describing the process of yoga, of Ashtanga yoga. One gets the sense here that the meditating yogi has met all the qualifications. Now he's sitting in trance, in trying to achieve samadhi, and gradually, step by step, meaning that this is a process. It may go over some time because the mind is very obstinate. The mind is full of all kinds of desires we've cultivated for many births. And so it's not easy to control the mind. So hold back means to restrain the mind from where it wants to go. We all have experience. I'm trying to chant Hare Krishna. Is it, gee, did I even hear any of the names of that round? When I was like thinking of Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It's a struggle. And here, this phrase here is nice. Driti Grihitaya, carried by conviction. So this harkens back to the previous verse, in which the purport, and Prabhupada is quoting from the Upadeshamrita. And this, Rupa Goswami, there's only 11 verses in this Upadeshamrita. Upadeshamrita means the essence of all instruction, the nectar of all instruction. And in these 11 verses, he gives like a complete program for achieving the highest levels of bhakti yoga. And he starts at the very beginning, which is that you have to choose a preceptor. So he gives a very interesting definition there. He says, one who can control the urges of the mind and the urge to speak and the urge of vacho vegam, manasak, krodha, and the urge of anger, and the more visceral urges of the tongue, belly, and sex. If you find someone who's completely driti, completely controlled in that regard, then this person can make disciples all over the world. You can't get to that state of being absolutely pure of all of these, being able to transcend all these urges without being on the high platform of Krishna consciousness. So that's the first thing. Then he gives the dangers. There's these 6 things, which actually expand into 8, are sure to block and destroy your bhakti progress. Atyahara priyasascha, prajalpo niyamagraha, janasangas chalaulyam cha, shadbir bhakti pranashiti. So this prefix pra is always an intensifier. You have sangha, but then you have prasanga. Sangha is attachment, prasanga is obsession. Okay? or sangha is association, but it can be kind of informal. But prasanga is serious association in which you're hearing with ardent devotion what's being said. So pranashyati means totally destroyed. Hare Krishna. So these 8 things are destroying. So what are they? Over-collecting, overeating. That's the first thing. Very practical. Any devotee who knows, you're giving up everything. You're giving up illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, intoxication, and all of these other things. But at least we have prasadam. Prabhupada knew very well. He said, eat as much as you want. He would feed them. He had one bhakta named Stradish. Actually, he was initiated eventually. He was a young boy. His parents, carefully placed him in Prabhupada's care. This is 1966, one little ashram in New York. And Prabhupada would insist that he take more chapatis. Eventually, he would pile up like 12 chapatis and eat them at every meal. And eventually, they said, okay, now it's time to kind of taper off a little bit. So the idea is that has to be controlled eventually. Atya and collecting, so it's expanding. And not just eating, but collecting anything. The over collecting. The tendency is to have more and more. Priyasas means to struggle hard for material things. To aspire for material ends and to struggle hard for it, to place your energy in that. This diverts you from bhakti yoga. If we're going to struggle hard, we'll struggle hard to build a temple or do something for Krishna. So this is another. Pajalpa means sound vibration, either you're speaking or hearing, that has nothing to do with Krishna. We're surrounded by it. It's very difficult. Niyamagraha. This also expands into 2. Niyamagraha means giving up the regulative prescriptions for bhakti yoga. Chanting, not chanting, doing, not doing. Or going through the motions, but not really having a heart. You're just sort of there, but you're not really there. In other words, there's a certain pretense to it. It's a kind of position you can't really sustain for long but that's a sign that you're backsliding. If you're going, you're attending the class, or you're attending this or doing that, but your mind is elsewhere. That's niyamagra. Or simply not attending. That's also niyamagra. Janasanga. Janasanga means associating with ordinary non-devotees. Everything rubs off. If you associate with devotees, that'll rub off. You'll become interested in devotion. And you associate with non-devotees, and you'll become like them. That's just the nature of the mind, the nature of human life. And then finally, laulyam. Laulyam is the ardent desire for something. It's a word for greed. But it means that you have all kinds of ardent desires, but it has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. You're maintaining those desires. And that itself is a blockage in Krishna consciousness. So, and then the second verse is positive. These are the things to avoid. Now here are the things you want to embrace. And that's the verse quoted in the purport to text 24. Utsaha nishtaya. Hi, Bolaric. Welcome. No, the chair is coming. Bhakti and Marcy saw that you're going to need a chair. So now here's the positive side. Now if we can embrace these, those negative ones will be easier to control. Utsahan means enthusiasm. Now sometimes this is the way it works. You're in a kirtan or you're doing something, but you're not really that enthusiastic about it. You're more in the mood of an observer. Which doesn't really. I mean, it's good that you're there and you're getting benefit, but it's not not getting the full benefit. So even if you're not enthusiastic, try to act enthusiastic, and you'll see Krishna from within the heart. He says, "Okay, he'll give you some enthusiasm." Nishtayad darya. These 3 things. Now, actually, this makes sense when you read the second part. Tat karma pavartanat. Tat karma pavartanat means all the do's and don'ts of Krishna consciousness. We're back to the nitty-gritty of Krishna consciousness. What to do, chant Hare Krishna. What not to do, eat meat. Okay, we know that. So if we're beginning to follow those things. But we should be enthusiastic about it, and we should be determined and patient. Because if you're impatient, that means that it didn't come after 2 weeks, I'm giving it up. But patience means, just like anything that is of value, requires some time to mature. Suppose you want to get a degree in school, or you want to learn to play an instrument, or whatever. You have to be patient. You may notice little increments of, or breakthroughs you have, but still you have to persevere. And that brings us also, we're going to, that is referent to the text we chanted today, and that's 25. We'll discuss in a minute. So, in reference to all the do's and don'ts of Krishna consciousness, one has to be enthusiastic and determined and patient. And Sangha Tyaga, this is the other side of Sangha, what was it? Janasangha. Janasangha is what we have to avoid. This will destroy our bhakti. Sangha Tyagat means giving up bad association. So you see from both the positive and negative side, this particular one is emphasized. Means that you want to destroy your bhakti, then associate. You want to improve your bhakti, don't associate. So Sangha Tyagat with the materialists. And Sato Vritte means following in the footsteps, embracing the example of devotees who have gone before. That's true of anything you want to excel at. So now the verse that we just studied today, Shanai Shanai Rupanamed. Gradually, step by step. If you try to do it all at once, the mind will rebel. Just like if you try to go cold turkey on something, you're addicted to chocolate, say, never again. I'll never taste it. But that's all you can think about. You know what I mean? Better to, step by step. Prabhupada, when he started preaching, some of his devotees, they would smoke cigarettes, and he knew how hard it was to give that up. There's a pastime in San Francisco. One of his most, important and essential devotees in the early days was Shama Sundar, who was a very striking figure. He's tall, very good looking, very skilled. He's the one who arranged for the mantra rock dance in San Francisco, and you had all the major groups at that time, even Jefferson Airplane. Does anyone heard of them even today, right? Right. That's like 50 years ago. So they volunteered to play at this mantra rock dance because he was so charismatic and enthusiastic. But he had a smoking problem. He would smoke cigarettes. So get this scene now. It's the early days, just after the temple is opened there. Essential months in 1967, starting in January through April. And this is the first temple on the West Coast, and it's right in the middle of the Summer of Love is coming up, 1967. Like Krishna arranged for him to come there. Thousands of young people are streaming in, dropping LSD, living on the street, searching for bliss. And so Prabhupada comes in there, and they start this temple right in the middle of Haight-Ashbury. So then, there's all kinds of things going on. So in one store, Malati, she notices a barrel, and in that barrel are little figures from India. She doesn't know what they are, so she steals one, honestly. She stole one. And she brought it back to Prabhupada, and she said, "What is this, Prabhupada?" Prabhupada gets up from his seat and offers his obeisances. It's a little figurine of Jagannath. They had been imported from India, from Puri, Orissa or something, where they probably make them en masse, carve them. And so, this high. And it's a perfect replica of the Jagannath we have here, and the Jagannath. So Prabhupada said, so Malati said, "Well, who is that, Prabhupada?" "Oh, that's Jagannath, Lord of the Universe. It's Krishna." But in different form, So were there other figurines? Yes, there was a whole barrel of them. So she goes back. I don't know if she stole the other two, but anyway, she comes back with Subhadra and Balaram. So now they have little Jagannath deities. This is a whole new thing now, I understood that all of the devotees, there were maybe a dozen of them, they got them, and they made little bags and hung them around their neck, for good luck. I didn't hear that part. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear that. But so Prabhupada said, "Samasundar, can you carve these? This will be the first deities in ISKCON. You can make big ones." I don't know how big he made. Maybe this height, pretty big. And so he said, sure. He was good with wood. He was a woodworker. That was another one of his skills. So he goes to his apartment, and hours on end, he's carving. So Prabhupada came in to visit him, and he's got, he's working on Jagannath, and on Jagannath's head, he's got a cigarette that he's smoking. Not that he's burning it, but it's like. So Prabhupada said, you can't have that.
But he didn't say, stop smoking. He said, try to decrease 1 cigarette a day, He probably knew. And he was able to give it up, So that's Shanai Shanai, gradually, step by step. One should hold back the mind from all the things it's thinking of. By strength of the intelligence carried by conviction. Atma Sangstam, placed in transcendence. Now, it's interesting, the Prabhupada fixed on the self alone. Now, this, when you read these books, you don't see all the backstory of the editing that went on. I think that self used to be a small s. We have this convention in the books that when you have the word self with a small s, that indicates the individual soul, and self with a big S, that's the super soul, or Krishna. So we're not fixed on our own self, we're fixed on the super soul. That's the idea. Krishna has already said, fixed on me, in the previous verse. So, the mind fixed on me, and don't think of anything else. So this is like what yoga is all about. It's an effort. When you go up, Prabhupada mentions pratyahara here. So there's these 8 steps. You start out with yama and niyama. It's very interesting. Yama means the don'ts. Really, before you do anything, you have to stop all the nonsense. Just like to come here, there's a million things or more that you didn't do, and you made that one decision to come here, right? So the yama are the don'ts. Just like if you're going to do Krishna consciousness, well, you can't, be drinking and smoking and, carousing. That you have to give that up, at least for the time being, until you give it up altogether. So the no's come first, the don'ts, and then the niyamas are the do's. In any discipline, there are don'ts and do's. So yama and niyama. And then when you got those straight, and you're sitting on your asana. So yama, niyama, asana. Now that sitting is a whole thing. I remember when I practiced yoga, you get to the half lotus, with the foot up here, placed on here, which is pretty good. You can sit on your back. But the real settled one is the full lotus. Have you ever tried that one? Yeah. I used to do that. It gets a little painful after a while. You have to kind of work into it. But that's your asana. So now you're sitting. Then how do I control that mind? The mind's all over the place. So then comes the pranayama, the regulated breathing, which is very scientific. It does help to calm the mind. I've experienced it. If you practice counting in, out, left, right, so forth, balances the nadis. There's all these subtle energies, and then the pratyahara. The pratyahara means withdrawing the senses. Now you're just sitting there. So where's that? It means that the mind is connected to the senses. So all the ideas of enjoying this, enjoying that, memory, that has to be withdrawn and restrained. So the physical senses are restrained, but also the mental imagination of the senses working. That's pratyahara. And then after that, what is it? Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara. That's 5. Then the last 3 are really when you start meditating. But first comes dharana. Dharana means concentration. It's not that meditation. Meditation is stronger focus. But concentration implies that the mind is rebelling here. Bring it back. Bring it back. Bring it back. Until it's almost like building up a muscle, so that you can focus, really focus. The whole thing is focusing. So then, if you're focusing nicely, and it may take months or years to get to really be able to focus for some time on the Lord in the heart, the self. That's called dhyana. Then you're really meditating. And when you get it to the point where it's flowing like oil, it's like or the lamp in a windless place, the light is steady. There's not even a flicker. Then it's a samadhi. You're fully absorbed, and that's the state which he described a few verses back. So this is he's describing the sadhana practice here, and it may go on for 10,000 years. Valmiki meditated for 60,000 years before he finally had, of course he had been a thief, and he didn't want to chant Rama, so they gave him the money. Well, you chant Mara, you chant death. Okay. Mara, 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 Rama, Rama. He ended up chanting Rama, Rama, Rama. They tricked him into it. And it worked. It took him 60,000 years, but he became completely pure, wrote the whole Ramayana. So now he's just describing this process. All right, should we go on? Text 26. Yato nischalati manaschancchalam astidam tatastato niyamyaitad Atmanyeva vashangnayet. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it under the control of the self, capital S, self. Purport. The nature of the mind is flickering and unsteady. But a self-realized yogi has to control the mind. The mind should not control him. One who controls the mind, and therefore the senses as well, is called Goswami, or Swami. And one who is controlled by the mind is called Godas, or the servant of the senses. A Goswami knows the standard of sense happiness. In transcendental sense happiness, the senses are engaged in the service of Rishikesh, or the supreme owner of the senses, Krishna. Serving Krishna with purified senses is called Krishna consciousness. That is the way of bringing the senses under full control. What is more, that is the highest perfection of yoga practice. So, if you study this chapter, you see that in every single purport that I can remember, Prabhupada brings it back home to Krishna consciousness as the supreme yoga. At the end of this last short purport, he said, this state is easily attained by directly practicing Krishna consciousness. So, and it's important to do that. Here Krishna himself is saying, Chanchalam astiram. And Arjuna will echo this in a few verses when he pleads that, I don't think I can do this. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, he repeats it. The mind is very unsteady. Chanchala means going here. What is that? Chanchala? Chanchala is a word for Lakshmi, Mother Lakshmi, because she doesn't stay in one spot. Have you noticed? Sometimes you get money, sometimes you lose the money. It's taken away, or you have the money, but suddenly it's worth 1/10 of what it was yesterday. Another way is chanchala. So the mind is very unsteady. Yato nischalati. The word chalati, chanchalam, obviously related. So Krishna, he's describing what the actual process is. You're steadily thinking of something, and then from nowhere some memory comes. This takes you a million miles away. It's called the manorata, the chariot of the mind. Chariot of the mind. Like when you're in fourth grade, you're thinking of something, you're looking out the window, and you've just taken the chariot of the mind. What is it? What is the train of thought? Right? The train of thought. You've taken the train of thought to a different town. So that's the way it is. So Krishna is encouraging us to bring it again under the control of the self. Now, if we just focus now on Krishna consciousness, it sounds pretty austere, the self. What is that self? You don't have all of the wonderful, ornate beauty of the deity, the holy name, which is itself attractive to the mind. This all sounds like, a very difficult job, because nothing is mentioned here about how the ultimate object of meditation really is all attractive. If you can get absorbed in thinking of Krishna, Radha Krishna, you'll automatically be attracted. The problem is the mind is so flickering, you're not perceiving them in reality. You're habituated to being attracted to the things of this material world. The reflection, everything that's attractive here is a distorted reflection of the original attraction to Krishna and the spiritual world. There, the real sense pleasure takes place, because it's not selfish. That sense pleasure is achieved by giving Krishna pleasure with your mind and with your senses. That's the key. In the essential concept of the philosophy is the Chincha Beta Beta Tattva, the simultaneously separate and one. In Bhakti we emphasize the separation, because we want to have some space so we can engage in service to Krishna. We have to recognize the difference. The last thing you want to do is merge into Krishna, and that ends your bhakti right there. Right? So all this merging business, forget it. We want to keep our individuality, as Krishna says you eternally have, right at the beginning of the Gita. So Krishna's great, and I'm very small. How can I fix my mind on him? So this is where he gives us, there's my name, there's my form, there's my pastimes, qualities. All of these things are innately attractive if you simply expose yourself to them. You hear of them from the right source, you see in the right attitude, and paintings painted by devotees. I'll tell you a story. Back in the 80s, when I was in Philadelphia, the early 80s, there was a certain phase in ISKCON where temples were trying to support themselves, not so much by book distribution, but by painting distribution, paraphernalia distribution. And so these paintings can be a good business. They're like Korean paintings that they painted by many Vietnamese. They were pretty cheap, and then you could sell them to people to decorate their houses and things like that. So this was going on, and we had the whole team there who were going out and selling these paintings. So they said, well, why don't we get a painting of Krishna? We've got all these Korean artists who are painting for us all the time. So let's do that. So I remember when that painting of Krishna arrived, it wasn't painted by a devotee. Everything was there, the flute was there, the lotus eyes and everything, but there was something missing. There's something missing, the bhakti. You know what I'm saying? And you can see it because, in any painting, the consciousness of the artist is reflected, obviously. So I said, we don't want that painting in the temple. Maybe there's blue Krishna standing, but that's not a good rendition, because the bhakti wasn't there. Krishna didn't agree to really come out of that painting and attract us with him, So that's a very important point. Now, even much more significantly, is we shouldn't hear glorification of Krishna from a non-devotee. There's a verse, and that includes the holy name, because the Hare Krishna mantra has become popular, and there are some very skilled musical renditions, and by non-devotees. And devotees who don't discriminate, they'll play that in the ashram and this and that. But we should be very careful not to do that. Sanatana Goswami has this verse. What is it? Oh, God. Can't forget these verses. Yes. Avaishnavo mukod girnam putam hadikatamritam shavanam naiva kartavyam sarpochishtam yatapayaha. So a Vaishnava mukod girnam means from the mouth of a non-Vaishnav. Putam, purifying, harikatamrita, the nectar of Krishna Katha, harikatha. Okay, the otherwise purifying nectar and Krishna Katha may be coming from the mouth of a non-Vaishnava. A Vaishnava mukod putam harikatam shavanam naiva kartam, one should never hear, because it's just like the milk touched by the lips of a serpent. It has the venom in there, but you can't taste it. It tastes just like nice old milk. But if you drink it, you die. So similarly, we have to discriminate, in other words. We can't just read any old book about Krishna, or hear any old vibration, which is all over the internet and YouTube, that may be very pleasant to hear materially, but is not being chanted by Vaishnavas. Now, fortunately, there's some very skilled Vaishnavas who are also singing, and they're actual it's a great combination. When I was in Alachua, I'm sitting in a class, and when they gave me the assignment, they gave me, okay, you're going to give class on this day, this day, this day, and one of the days was Bhaktivinoda's appearance day, which we just had a couple of Wednesdays ago, right? So I said, okay, I know something about Bhaktivinoda, but in order to bone up on that, because it's I'm going to speak amongst a big audience here. I read this book called The Seventh Goswami, which is a book by a nice devotee written years ago in the 80s. But it really, he did a lot of research on the life and teachings of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. A wonderful book. But then, as I was, the day before I got on the plane, he said, Dravida, can you take Tuesday instead of Wednesday? Because we have this Swami coming, and believe it or not, it was Bhaktivinoda Swami. What could be more appropriate? I'd never heard him before speak. So I said, okay, so Tuesday happened to be the appearance day of Vamana Dev, so I boned up on that pastime, So when it came time, Wednesday, I sat down, I was, preparing to hear, and I did hear a very nice exposition of his life from this Bhaktivinoda Swami. But as he was chanting, I think he chanted Jaya Radhamadhava, there was a boy sitting next to me. He couldn't have been more than 20, and he turned out to be about 20, 21. And he was playing the drum in such a skilled way. It's like he must have grown up in Mayapur, because they learned from. He's an American kid, But it was extremely skilled, with deep concentration. So I was just relishing the drum playing with the speaker. So I heard the beautiful class, and then afterward I complimented him on his drumming. And it turns out he was the son of an old friend of mine who lives there, named Janmashtami, who I knew from way back in the 70s in New York. I lived in Manhattan Temple. They had a 11-story skyscraper for a while. He was there, and this boy, sure enough, had grown up in Mayapur. He'd studied there, and he was teaching the devotees all over the country through the internet. He was, teaching them, getting some donations, and not just drumming, also harmonium and everything like that. It was a wonderful experience. So he introduced himself, and then later I. Oh boy! 2 years ago, I had an experience. I was at a program, invited, and we want to have a kirtan with Russians. There's a lot of Russians there, and so usually there's at least one adult drummer, at these programs. But here there wasn't. It was just this kid, 6-year-old kid, and he started playing the drum. He was very enthusiastic, but he was totally out of time. And I don't recall it, but apparently I said something harsh to this boy. I said, if you don't know how to play, you shouldn't play. I maybe didn't look and see he was a little kid. But that had traumatized this kid. He stopped playing, he withdrew from any involvement with Krishna, like that. Nobody told me for 2 years. But this boy who had played the drum, his name was Prahlad Griffith. Griffith was his father's last name. I don't know, he probably wasn't initiated yet. He had been teaching this other boy. And so he was concerned that somehow we reconcile with this boy. He said, of course, I'll, whatever I can. So just the day before I left, we were able to go over there and apologized. His name was Balaram. He couldn't have been more than 8. I mean, he looked like 7. And he looked at me, and everything. And he said, are we okay? He said, okay, yeah. I think it'll be all right. So, anyway, but you see, everything about Krishna consciousness, the music, when it's really refined, like, the kirtans, can be so attractive. They're attractive materially, which is okay, because it's material used in Krishna service. So you may be attracted by the music, by the beat, by the dancing. But then, you're exposed to the chanting. The point is you're chanting, and if you get into the chanting, your mind isn't, you're not thinking of all that garbage in your, the material side. You're actually absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and that's it gives you a injection of bliss, of ananda, at least for that time. At least you experience something, and so that completely, overwhelms or goes beyond what we're learning here. What this, gradually drawing the mind in, fixing it on the self. That can happen in a very organic and natural way by the process of bhakti yoga. That's the whole idea. Somehow or other, we have to be yogis. The Krishna will say this at the end of this chapter. Become a yogi. If you're not a yogi, then your mind is going to be victimized by the modes of nature in this Kali Yuga. So in this age, it's either be a devotee of Krishna and progress in devotional service, to progress in yoga, or to be swept away by the modes of nature. There's no other way. There may be this yoga ashram, this yoga, this or that, but invariably, we read so many stories. I don't want to, get how these big yoga leaders, they get accused of having some affair or something, because they come to America, they get all of this influence. The guy who did, the hot yoga? The sweating yoga? That means that, to really get good at it, you're doing it in your tights. You're doing it in your bikini. Because it's sweating. It's too sweaty. Maybe that was the whole idea. Anyway, it's just, you can't even think about it. It's a corruption. But Krishna consciousness, because of the all attraction of Krishna, it can actually attract you away from that. And you can, follow the regular principles and do all these things. Who could imagine that? We're sitting here, 3 blocks from the beach, and in the Brahmacharya ashram, and Still, because of the intensity, because of the power of Krishna consciousness, it's possible to do that. So all of this is being resolved by Krishna, and every purport Prabhupada makes that point. Okay, let's go on. 27. Prashantamanasanghyenam yoginam sukham uttamam upaiti shanta rajasam brahmabhutam akalmasham. Eric, you want to check out a book? Yeah, we're on page 280. All right, let's see what this says in English. 227 at the bottom of 280. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Brahmabhuta. Purport. Brahmabhuta is the state of being free from material contamination and situated in the transcendental service of the Lord. Mad bhaktim labate param. This is Bhagavad Gita 1854. One cannot remain in the quality of Brahman, the Absolute, until one's mind is fixed on the lotus feet of the Lord. Savaimana Krishna Padara Bindayo. To be always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, or to remain in Krishna consciousness, is to be factually liberated from the mode of passion and all material contamination. Okay, Prashanta Manasam. Prashanta Manasam. Shanta is peace. So Prashanta means peaceful. Very peaceful. Here's that prefix pra again. By being fixed on the lotus feet of Krishna. And sukham uttamam, experiencing the highest happiness, highest perfection of transcendental happiness. Yes, shanta, again the word shanta is used. His passion is pacified. Rajasa means the mode of passion is shanta, pacified. And brahmabhutam akalmasham. Now the verse in the 18th chapter, which is very famous, Prabhupada refers to here, brahmabhuta prasanatma nashochati nakanchati samaksaveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labate param. So this brahmabhuta platform, which is equivalent to what is called the pure goodness. There's the mode of passion, the mode of ignorance, and the mode of goodness. And then when the mode of goodness is not tainted at all by passion and ignorance, is called pure goodness, or the Vasudev state, which sounds very familiar. It's like Vasudev. So Vasudev, the long and short A's are very important. So Vasudev is a state of pure goodness in which one realizes Vasudev in the heart, And so that's characterized by prasanatma, this natural joy in the heart. And prasanatma means very clear also. The mind is extremely clear and pacified. And characterize, a symptom you can see, nashochati nakanchati, means you don't lament for anything. And you don't hanker for anything. You've already achieved it. You, as explained in the text 20 to 23, that having attained this state means a steady remembrance of Krishna's lotus feet and Krishna's pastimes, and absorption in Krishna. You don't feel you need anything else. You're completely blissful. You're experiencing a flow of happiness that material happiness just seems so pale and insignificant compared to. But without experiencing that, we go for the pale reflection because we're enjoying souls. We're taking a false, very inferior imitation of sense gratification for the actual bliss of contacting Krishna and relating to Krishna in this loving relationship. So this is what he's describing here, Brahmabhuta platform. Kalmasham means pure or freed from all sinful reactions. Now this, means that you're liberated. You're not taking birth again, which is the holy grail from many yogis. For devotees, that's a byproduct of bhakti. You don't pray to Krishna, please, let me not take birth again, You're praying, the serious bhakti is praying for service, praying for love. You take your guide from Lord Chaitanya. He showed us how to pray, taking the role of a devotee. It's Krishna himself teaching us. It says, nadanang najanang nasundarin kapitang vajagadish kamaye mama janmani janmani shade bhavata bhakti daharitu tvahi. So this is a prayer that any neophyte can utter, And if you can utter it sincerely, then you really advance. So he says, this is what I'm not praying for. Normally, people pray for wealth, followers, health, let me pay my mortgage, something, But he says, nadanang. That's the first. Not any wealth. I'm not praying. Najanam, not any followers. I don't want to be a very powerful leader. Forget it. Najanam nasundadim kavitam. A beautiful wife or husband. Kavitam can mean various things. Can mean a mundane education, that whole thing. Va. Jagadisha Kamaye. Kamaye, I'm not desiring any of these things, O Lord of the universe. Now, notice he's not praying directly to Krishna here in Vrindavan. He's praying to God. If God is anything, he's Jagadish. He's the Lord of the universe. And then he says, Mama Janmani Janmanishware. So that line implies that he's not praying for mukti either. Because as soon as you say birth after birth, O Lord, then that means I'm not praying for mukti, which means ending birth and death. You see that? So then what are you praying for? Nadanang, najanang, nasundaring, kavatang, vajig, mama janmani janmanishware. Let birth after birth, O Lord, mama janmanishware, bhavatad bhaktir ahoituki. Bhakti to you, which is ahoituki, free of any material motive. You see? That's what the devotees pray for. And then more specifically, be praying to Krishna, the son of Nanda in Vrindavan. Ai Nanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam bodho. Kripaya tavapada punkaja stitadhuli sadashang vachintaya. Now a few verses earlier he says, if you want to chant, this is about chanting the holy name in the right attitude. If you really want to do it, you have to feel yourself as insignificant and as a straw in the street. In other words, I have no shelter. I can be trampled at any moment. Please save me. You feel completely dependent on the Lord's mercy. That's how we have to call out to Krishna. So, in this verse, he's saying a similar thing. O Nanda Maharaj, O son of Nanda Maharaj. How's it go? Your servant for eternity. I lost my true identity and fell into this horrid sea of birth and death, O Lord. O Nanda's son, please hear my plea. By your sweet grace, consider me a speck of dust upon your lotus feet forevermore. Put it into a poem. So that reinstatement as a speck of dust, in other words, how significant is that? Most significant. In other words, if that speck of dust is at Krishna's lotus feet, your search is ended. You're in good shape. Here he says, by meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, right? Peaceful, fixed on the lotus feet. So if you're situated there, rendering service, you're meditating. So that's the prayer of the devotee. Not that, please lift me up, out of this ocean of birth and death. Now that can also be a prayer, but in the context of bhakti, where the devotee prays in Rupa Goswami. He says, "Manasijapandi jushte, labdapatos mi dushte, timanagahana rupe, hanta sangsara kupe, ajita nikala rakshahe tumudara daksham, upanayama mahaste bhakti rajum namaste." Rajum. Do you speak Hindi? No? Oh, okay. Do you know what raju is? It's a rope. Oh. Does that ring a bell? Maybe it's too much Sanskrit. Anyway, bhakti rajum is the rope of bhakti. So he says, fallen in this deep and dark and dirty well of Maya, threatened by the snake of lust, whose venom burns like fire, helplessly I pray, O Lord, whose strength is ne'er in doubt. Place the rope of bhakti in my hands and pull me out. So he's recognizing, recognizes the hopeless and helpless situation that we're in. We can't get out of this on our own. Krishna says right in the Gita, Daivayeshu gunamami mama maya doratyaya. Doratyaya means impossible to cross on your own. What is it? This material world, which is characterized by the modes of nature. It's my maya. In other words, it's my energy, divine. It's divine energy, even though it's material. We call it material. You can't pass it on your own or surpass it. Then how can we surpass it? By surrendering unto me, you can easily cross beyond it. So this is what the prayer is. The rope of bhakti is predicated on recognizing ourselves as eternal servants of Krishna. Now Krishna can lower that rope down, and he has, in the form of ISKCON, in the form of these books, the holy name, the prasadam, the deities, and everything else. The sangha. The rope is here, but we have to hold on to it. If we don't hold on to that rope, even Krishna can't save us. If we're determined to be in Maya, then Krishna says, okay, you know. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was even more merciful. He would just go through the street and chant, and by his energy, people would immediately become pure devotees. In fact, it looks like involuntarily, but that's another thing. But at this point in time, we have to hold on to that rope. That is our contribution. It means yama, niyama, you know, all of the do's and don'ts. Okay, it's 8:05. Any comments, questions? We don't have any time. Okay, let me read one or two things here. We should move along in our Upadeshamrita reading. But now I'm leaving again, so what's the use? Just for a weekend. Okay. Bookmark. There it is. Okay, this is in Upadeshamrita 2. This is the Atyahara Piyasascha. Human life is meant for God realization, and the human being is given higher intelligence for this purpose. Those who believe that this higher intelligence is meant to attain a higher state should follow the instructions of the Vedic literatures. By taking such instructions from higher authorities, one can actually become situated in perfect knowledge and give real meaning to life. In Srimad Bhagavatam 129, Sri Sutta Goswami describes the proper human dharma in this way: Dharmasya yapavargasya narto tayopakolpate nartasya dharmaikantasya kamolabhaya hismata. All occupational engagements or dharmas are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service or dharma should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. The first step in human civilization consists of occupational engagements performed according to the scriptural injunctions. The higher intelligence of a human being should be trained to understand basic dharma. In human society, there are various religious conceptions, characterized as Hindu, Christian, Hebrew, Mohammedan, Buddhist, and so on. For without religion, a human society is no better than animal society. As stated above, religion is meant for attaining emancipation from material energy, not for getting bread. Sometimes human society manufactures a system of so-called religion aimed at material advancement, but that is far from the purpose of true dharma. Religion entails understanding the laws of God, because the proper execution of these laws ultimately leads one out of material entanglement. That is the true purpose of religion. Unfortunately, people accept religion for material prosperity because of atyahara, or an excessive desire for such prosperity. But true religion instructs people to be satisfied with the bare necessities of life while cultivating Krishna consciousness. Even though we require economic development, true religion allows it only for supplying the bare necessities of material existence. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. The real purpose of life is to inquire about the absolute truth. If our endeavor, priyas, is not to inquire about the absolute truth, we will simply increase our endeavor to satisfy our artificial needs. A spiritual aspirant should avoid mundane endeavor. All right, one more paragraph. Another impediment is prajalpa. These are the 6 I mentioned in the earlier part of the class. Another impediment is prajalpa, unnecessary talking. When we mix with a few friends, we immediately begin unnecessary talking, sounding just like croaking toads. If we must talk, we should talk about the Krishna consciousness movement. Those outside of the Krishna consciousness movement are interested in reading heaps of newspapers, magazines, and novels, solving crossword puzzles, and doing many other nonsensical things. In this fashion, people simply waste their valuable time and energy. In the Western countries, old men retired from active life play cards, fish, watch television, and debate about useless socio-political schemes. All these and other frivolous activities are included in the prajalpa category. Intelligent persons interested in Krishna consciousness should never take part in such activities. Okay, so we'll pick that up next time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Can you stay for the kirtan? Okay, good. Let's see, Upadeshamrita. There it is.